day again, guys. Welcome to this edition of Steve's Small Engine Saloon. My wife, April, told me about a month ago. She said, you know what you should do? You need to make a video showing people how to rewind the line on their weed eaters properly. I said, that's a great suggestion. Nice idea. Guys, I love ideas. Put them down in the comment section. Tell me your ideas. Tell me what you want to see. I love it. So here we are a month later. I'm finally getting around to it. Found some WeedEater beer at the store today. Haven't had that for a long time. Yep, that'll work. It's a Husqvarna Buff, Survivor style. My wife is a huge Survivor fan. She thinks I look badass, so don't bug me about it. So what do we got here? It's a weed eater. It's a line trimmer, a grass trimmer, whatever you want to call it. This is actually kind of a difficult video to make because there's easily over 100 different line heads that you could possibly have on your trimmer. I can't possibly take you through every single one of them and say, here is the exact line head that you have in your hand right now, and here's how to do this step by step. So what I decided to do was take you through the basics, the general rules of thumb, the common sense kind of stuff. From the information that I give you today, I think that you got about a 99% chance of figuring out whatever line head that you have. First thing I need to do is show you the concept of how these bump and go line heads actually work. Had a guy come in once and he was like, look at this thing doesn't work. And he's pounding on the bottom and look, it's not coming out. That's not how these work. You have to have your unit running. You have to have your unit spinning, rev it up so this thing's spinning around. How this works is that centrifugal force as it's spinning is pulling on these two lines. Then when you bump it, it pops out about 20, 25 millimeters, something like that. For all y'all Americans out there, it's about an inch. Now that you know how that works, what you got to verify for yourself for your line trimmer is what way this spins. You don't need to start it up. There's an easy way to do this because curved shaft weed eaters and straight shaft weed eaters spin different directions. Look at your guard. You have a guard, you have a line cutter, some people call it the knife, that cuts your trimmer line off at the right length. It's on one side of the guard or the other side of the guard. All you need to concern yourself with is if your knife is on this side, your cutter is on this side of the guard, it spins this way. If it's on this side of the guard, that means your line is going to be spinning this way. I have to bring this up. I would love to get my hands on the guy who ever started the myth, the rumor, that when you have two line heads coming out and you wind this, one of those lines goes clockwise and the other line goes counterclockwise. That is physically impossible for this to happen. No line head in history has ever been invented where the two lines wind in opposite directions. If you did that, when you're pulling on these lines, one line is going to be trying to pull the spool inside of here this way. This line is going to be trying to spin it this way. It just won't work. It's simple as that. It just won't work. If somehow magically you get the spool inside to advance in the direction that it's supposed to advance, it's going to pop this line out 1 inch. What's going to happen with this line? It's going to suck this line in 1 inch. It's as simple as that. It won't work. Your two lines in your line head do not wind in the opposite directions. Brings me to line head diameter. There are different thicknesses, diameters of these lines. I'm going to just take you through the general rules of thumb for this. Doesn't apply 100% of the time. Stick with this rule of thumb. If you have an electric weed eater, one of those old ones you plug in, whatever, you use 065 line, which is the thinnest. If you have a curve shaft weed eater, here's a curve shaft. We call it a curve shaft because the shaft curves. 080 line in that. Straight shaft weed eater, like this one, 095. If you happen to have a straight shaft weed eater that's a really big one with bike handles on it kind of thing, and you got a really big line head on here, you can go up to like 105 line. Very few people have that, more landscapers kind of stuff. So that takes me to, obviously, we don't wind the line around the line head. There's a spool inside of these things. That's what you wind your line head in. Like this. That's a spool. That's what you actually wind your line around. Now, if you're really lucky, you're going to have your spool is going to have an arrow on it. On one side or the other, it's going to have an arrow on it that shows you what direction to wind those two lines in, which go the same direction. Not all of these have an arrow on them, unfortunately. Some of these spools, depending on the manufacturer and everything, kind of have made these things that they've tried to design them where it's kind of almost impossible for you to wind it backwards. Trying to make it impossible for you to wind it backwards. Like this one, for instance, it has a divider in the middle. A lot of these spools have a divider in the middle to keep your two lines separated. Now, this one here has a slit cut into the divider. It's on an angle. It's kind of a hook. It's not straight up and down. The reason for that is they're trying to make it hard for you to do it backwards. You take a piece of line, and here's another thing I can't show you. I can't tell you how much line. I can't tell you if your line head takes 10 feet, 15 feet, or 20 feet, because it's different for every line head. You're going to have to experiment with that yourself. Start with 10 feet. 10 feet. Take one piece. If you have that divider in there, take one piece, fold it in half. So you got a little loop there. Now I'll show you what I mean by how they don't want you to do it backwards. Here's one that has kind of a hook in it. If you put your line in the wrong way and try to wind it the wrong direction, it's sliding off that little slope right there. It's almost impossible to actually wind it backwards if you do that. Where if you go the proper way, now it's actually hooked in there. You can pull that as tight as you want and it can't slide off of there. Now you know you're going the right direction. You wind that around there on opposite sides of the divider and you're going the right way. Another option is a line head like this. This is off a Stihl weed eater. This is one that has a divider in it, but it does not have a slit in it anywhere. There's two holes drilled in the spool itself beside the dividers that are drilled at an angle. They're also attempting to try to help you not be able to wind it the opposite directions. And here's why I say that. How to lock your line in there. You stick one line in this way, one line in this way. It's at an angle. If you try to start winding that line the wrong way, those just pull right back out of that hole. the idea behind that is that they want you to put your lines in there. These ones are made to actually go backwards like that. So now your line went in that direction. You fold it around this way. It just created a little hook. Now you can pull on that as hard as you can, and you can't make those lines come out. Now you start winding it around really tight, and they won't come out. Now on that one, you know you're going the right direction. But what happens if you have a line head like this? Here's your spool. There is no divider. There is no arrow on this showing you which way to wind this. There's a hole that is made to put your line head through, but there's no indication at all on this one which way you're supposed to wind this thing, and no divider. I'm going to show you a couple things on this one. What you have to do in this situation, you have to figure out for yourself which way to wind this thing. You take this, if this was the head that this came off of, you're looking at it this way. You just verified already which way this thing spins. This one's spinning clockwise in your view, because you know the cutter's on this side, it's going this way. Hold your spool up as if it's on there. 99% of these things, you wind the line the opposite direction of the way it spins. So this way. This is spinning this way. That means you wind the line on the opposite direction. Now, if you take this line, because there's no divider in the middle of here to separate your lines, if you just take this line and start going like this, winding it around there, you can't do that. What just happened right there is every time that you did that, the line crossed over itself. Every time you went around one revolution, the line crossed itself one revolution. You're going to bump it 2-3 times, and the lines are going to be so twisted around each other that it's just going to jam your line head. You have to wind this very carefully and keep those lines separated, because there's no divider in there. You have to divide the lines yourself, is what you have to do. Once you get that line full, you're going to need to put this spool back on your line head. You're going to need to take those two lines, feed them through the holes that are in your actual cup, and get the spool back on there somehow. If you just take it like this and try to put it on there, boom, look what just happened right there. Rat's nest. It just all tangled up, unloaded. Every spool out there that I've seen, I shouldn't say everyone, but most of them out there, have two little notches. There's two little notches in the back of the spool. Those are made to help you lock those lines in place while you're trying to get it back into your line head itself. So this is how it works. You have it spooled up nice and tight. You take that and you snap it through those notches. And theoretically, you can just put that down and now it's not going to go rat's nest. When you're putting it back on, what I do is I hold my fingers over top of those like that so that those lines can't pop out of there. Now you can take your spool and feed your lines through, holding those in with your fingers, feed those lines through the holes, slip that on, pull those lines as you're doing that, and when you get that spool back on, you have to make sure that once it's in place, that you don't leave those lines in those notches, because then it's going to jam and they won't pull out as you're trying to bump feed it. So once it's in there, you got to look in there and just make sure that those lines are popped out of those notches like that. And once it's in there, then you're good to go. You pop the whole thing back together and you're good to go. So that's really as clear as I can make this, because there's so many line heads out there. I hope I helped you guys get the general idea of how to do this, and you can figure out your own line head for yourself. Yeah, so next time I'm going to hopefully have a special guest star on Steve Small Engine Saloon. I'm not going to tell you who it is right now. It's a surprise. Stay tuned for that. Till then, Steve out.